Welcome inside another episode of Point to the Passer. It has been a minute. I just want to wish everybody a happy July 4th and hope everyone had a good holiday because that is the last time that Jonathan and I were on the pod. We realize it's been too long. We appreciate you listening today. We have a lot to catch up on. We're a couple weeks into the season, but we wanted to jump on and kind of give a recap going into Feast Week, take a look back at the Kansas game, look at this 5-0 Tar Heel team, and let's talk some Caleb Wilson. Jonathan, it's been a busy stretch. We both changed jobs. We've had a lot of life things going on. How you been? What's going on with you, and how hyped are you on this year's team so far?
I'm doing well, Craig. Yeah, it's good to be back on. It has been a while. Doing well. New job is going well. I had told you when I started, pretty much any higher education job that you have, there's a lot of kickoff events around the fall semester, and this was no different. And they introduced a lot of new faculty and staff. So I was introduced and kind of talking about my background, schools that I've worked at, that type of thing, and I basically have taken a tour of North Carolina universities, except for one, being NC State, and sat in front of all of my new colleagues, coworkers, a lot of people there, that I would never work at NC State because I'm a Carolina fan. Will Wade's been talking his talk off season,
Always.
talking season now. During the season, he's still, even though he said, let's focus on us, we don't look, State fans, let's focus on State, not Duke and Carolina. Every chance he gets in front of a microphone, he's taking shots at Hubert Davis. So I took my shot at NC State. Turns out the next day I had a meeting with a faculty member who graduated from NC State. So great guy, went well, but it was kind of funny how that worked out.
Yeah, and here's the thing. We've been getting some pressure, not just from your dad, but from my new coworker who's a UNC fan. As soon as I mentioned the pod, I think the week after, she said, "Is there an episode drop? Like where you guys been?" So like we're hearing it from your dad, from her, from others. It's long overdue. And so we appreciate the pressure on us to come back. And anybody who's listening, we appreciate you tuning in to this episode. We have quite a bit to catch up on. Obviously, the big focus going into the year was the Kansas game. There was a lot of hype around Caleb Wilson and a lot of talk about Hubert Davis and him being on the hot seat. The first angle I want to take on this Kansas game, and we'll get to my experience there in the Dean Dome, which was absolutely unbelievable, but kind of how has that win cooled Hubert's seat temporarily and at least given the fan base something to be excited about, which we have really had some struggles with in the last couple of seasons with all the ups and downs.
Yeah, number one, in terms of fans wanting him gone, it cooled the seat a lot, right? The narrative was going to be, and we talked about
Yep.
this when we talked to Isaac Shade back in July, that game was huge for the narrative, for the noise around the program, and whether that impacted the actual decision makers, administration at UNC related to Hubert's job, that's a different story. But in terms of the fan opinion, it went a long way. And so that now there's from that game, at least for what, maybe not even 48 hours because Trimble gets hurt. But during that brief period, there's a lot of excitement. And it wasn't just that they won, which they really needed a win in that game. They could have overcome it if they didn't, but to get it, and now with Trimble being hurt, it's even more important. But it's, as you like to say, it's not just that they won, but it's how they did it. To quote Danny Green from back on that '09 team, you
Classic.
see how we did it. And really that was the piece I think that got people so excited, right? That
Yeah.
you get out of there with a 13-point victory in the second half. Wasn't even close. Score 58 points against Kansas. I think that was the second most or tied second most against a Bill Self team ever. It had shades of that Tennessee game from a couple of years ago where similar thing where Rick Barnes is just notorious for really tough defense, and they put up, I think, over 50 points and a half first half against Tennessee. So uh, I was really excited, very hyped, and then Trimble gets hurt, and that takes
Mhm.
some of the wind out of the sails. But at least, he's coming back, hopefully in a 6 to 8 week timeline, which would get him back by ACC play. But there's a lot of big games coming up in the meantime.
Yeah, and we'll get around to talking about the Seth injury in a little more detail in terms of timeline and the impact to the team, missing him in December and his timeline for return, hopefully being in early January. We were talking even by the ECU game, so time will tell with that. But the Kansas game itself, as we already kind of spoke to, it was huge for Hubert's hot seat, and it was huge for the fan base just to get re-energized, and I definitely felt it. So I actually woke up on Friday morning before the Kansas game without a ticket and realized, hey, it's actually one of my close friends' birthdays. Why don't we just look at prices? If they're, 125, 150, maybe we'll hold on. If they're under 100, let's start taking a look. And so they had dipped to under 100. We're sitting upper level, but then we said let's, splurge for some nice seats, and we still said upper, but it was more so center of the court and just a few rows back upper level. So we got there. We had a great time. The vibes were high on Franklin Street. We checked out an old classic in Goodfellas, had a drink or two there to celebrate. So it ended up being a really great evening. And the win, obviously, just the cherry on top of everything. The first half, I will say, felt a little bit like years past, where the shot's not falling. There's some frustrations, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, here we go again. The crowd was energized. I will give them credit throughout. They never let go of that team and cheering them on. But then you get into the second half and we just took off. And from the first few minutes where we just kind of pounced on them right away, you felt the energy, I think, honestly, setting the tone for the season in terms of what might have been said at half. And, we're not losing this game for various reasons. It's incredibly important, not just to the team this season, but to Carolina culture and defining this program going forward. That was the most important 20-minute stretch that we've had outside of any NCAA tournament games in several years. So to be there for feeling that energy and so much of that energy coming directly from Caleb Wilson, especially just starting early on. I mean, the first play of the game where he gets that putback dunk and slams it home, the Dean Dome is hyped, and it's like this kid has arrived. We've heard so much about him, completely just like impressed the entire time. But like my favorite play of that entire game, and I know Adam Lucas has written about this. I've seen a lot of folks, kind of feeling the same way. But in that moment where he's diving on the floor, he's getting up with the ball, he's tossing it down, he's hyping up the crowd. I was like, this is a Carolina kid, and I love watching him already. And my goodness, has that just amplified in the last few games where he is just a high flying player. He's incredibly athletic. He doesn't like losing at all. And it's like that passion comes through each and every minute he plays. And I think it's been so long that I don't even know who I can compare him to or if he is comparable right now. I've heard some comps. The only thing I can compare it to is Kobe White's energy. Not the same player, not the same position, but Kobe White's energy. And that to me is so important to the core of the team that's been carrying us. And I hope going into Feast Week will carry us through, and hopefully we'll talk a little bit more about Michigan State, but it'd be huge if we can get through Feast Week 2-0 too.
It would be. No, he's been electric. I think, I mean, we felt like over the summer and going back to that conversation with Isaac, which was back when we were right in the middle of the camp scrimmages and summer workouts and things. And at that point, even the word coming out was Carolina has not had a freshman like Caleb Wilson in a long time. And he was different. And he was showing that in some of the scrimmages to the point where we recalculated, right? And said, okay, initially it felt like he was going to be very impactful, but he was not billed as the guy necessarily, right? Didn't play that role with the Boozers during AAU play and did a really good job being that second option high energy guy, but he's a legitimate superstar, no question. He is emerging as potentially a top five pick in the upcoming draft. And you see it really is scratching the surface. He's not even showing the things that he'll be able to do down the road yet. And I appreciate that about him because he's playing within what he needs to do right now for this team to be successful. And the majority of that, to be honest with you, is just attacking the rim and trying to rip it off. And he's leading the country in dunks. I think I saw a stat, I want to say it was from Brian Ives, that he's has more dunks now already than Marvin Williams had throughout the course of his entire freshman year. And
Gracious.
that was mind blowing to
That's
think about.
unbelievable.
Yeah, and so he's his explosiveness stands out, his ability in transition to be able to handle at that size and to be able to get through multiple guys in traffic like he did in the last game against Navy and punch on basically the whole team. It's outstanding. But like you said, as talented as he is, as skilled as he is, and where he can go in terms of his facilitation skills, even his shooting, I think down the road it's his energy, it's his competitiveness, and he just wills them not to lose. And he plays angry, or as he says, pissed off. And you can see that and they need that to be
Yeah.
honest. This team is talented, but they're not so talented that they can't They have to play with that edge. They have to play with that chip. And so we've seen when they don't, where they let up and what happens even against some of the mid-major competition. But yeah, to have him be really, he's the leader of this team. I know Seth is a leader. And he is, but Caleb's the heart and soul of this team. This team goes as he goes, his energy, his aggressiveness. And he's able to jumpstart them, be a spark for them, even like he was in a stretch against Navy in the second half, but certainly against Kansas, really throughout that game. That was his best performance. I guess that's the last
Mhm.
thing I'll say about this point was Hubert even said there was something different about him that week. He's the type of guy who rises to the occasion in the biggest games. And he did. I mean, the fadeaway turnaround jump shots he hit, the degree of
Triple
difficulty,
teamed too.
yeah, unbelievable. And then even just the Tony set with that tip dunk that reminded me a little bit of Harrison Barnes against Kentucky uh, in his freshman year. Phenomenal. So there's not enough you could really say about Caleb Wilson. Um, I don't know where they would be without him, to be honest. He is that important to this team, and the pairing of him and Vasar together has been tremendous. Vasar's had a really solid start to the year. His best game was also against Kansas, and I feel like I've seen from him, saw this in the tournament against Duke last year with Henry, that he also seems to rise to the competition. He can tend to play up and down a little bit to the competition, it feels like. But I'm excited to see what he can do against Michigan State because that's going to be a physical game. It's going to be imperative that they are the best front court and that they lead with the front court. That's how they're going to win games, especially with Seth Trimble out for a while.
Yeah, totally agree. It's been fun to watch the two of them kind of really feeling like classic Carolina basketball that we grew up on with having that two big system and really having some size and some aggression and the at the same time the team is running its breaks and its runouts and that's been good. And not to mention the offensive rebounding. And Caleb Wilson has been a huge part of this. I mean, yeah, he's 6'10", but you can be 6'10" and not grab offensive boards. I mean, he's in there and he's been looking at the stats the last three games. This goes a little quieter than the 20 plus points that he scored in four or five, but he's gotten 14, 13, and 12 rebounds the last three games. And I understand the opponent. I get it. But the point is you have to be in there and battling and that's part of his game that he's bringing to the table. So you combine that with Vesar, and then you have someone like Cayenne who's starting to develop, and you really did see glimpses of this in the Kansas game about how good of a passer he can be. Some of these looks that he had to Vesar for reverse dunks or catching Caleb on a cut. He can really lock in. I think we're gonna really need to limit the turnovers, especially with your senior guard and Seth out. Cayenne's really got to step up when it comes to making sure that this team is controlled from the point. But if you can get him doing that and start running these sets and get guys like Luca and Jaren contributing from the outside, it spreads the floor out so much and really offers that stability on offense. And then really on defense, there's always tightening up to do, but you have the length and you've seen the amount of shot blocks that we've had in some of these games, and it just feels like this team is everywhere on defense at times, and I think that's only going to get better. We saw it with Harrison Ingram and the Cormac team where they really locked down some teams in ACC play when they went on that like 6 to 8 game stretch in early January. And I think if this team can develop at that rate defensively, then the shot's going to start falling. Kyle will settle in, and then I think we're looking really pretty. But they obviously have something to prove with Seth being out. Luca's shot hasn't fallen consistently, but there will be games where he's maybe going to hit 5 to 6, maybe 7 threes if he's lucky. He's going to have some big games. He is that pure of a shooter. It's just a matter of what's going to click and when. And again, I hope it is going into Feast Week. I hope everything clicks for Michigan State. Not to overlook St. Bonaventure, but I'm really focused on that game against the Spartans and seeing how we play without Seth and seeing who can really step up is what I'm going to be looking for.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, Kyan's one of those guys that is on my list for somebody who has to step up. He's been steady steadier than Elliott was last year. That was something they
Mhm.
wanted coming in, just in terms of the ups and downs. Now, of course, Elliott's ups are higher than what we've seen from Kyan in terms of his ceiling so far, but the floor was just so up and down and
It's tough.
inconsistent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what you want to see from Kyan is him to start to lose himself in the game a little bit more. I have liked that he's really been intentional about wanting to facilitate in the last couple of games. Navy, I think it was the first three possessions where he has an assist, and the game before that against Central was very similar, where he got a lot of assists right in those initial possessions. So you can tell he's making a point to be the point guard to really be that leader and facilitate offense early in the game. I think that next step is where he's just taking the reads of what comes and losing himself in the game more. And then I think the shots will start to go in as well. You do need him to be aggressive. It was maybe that Radford game, I want to say. It was Radford or Central where he didn't take a three the entire game. You can't have that from him,
Mhm.
somebody who's that good a shooter. And I know he had a really rough night shooting against Navy. Something like what, one for 8 from three, 1 for 9 from the field, something like that. But regardless, you need him to be aggressive. You need to stay aggressive. So that's the person that I'm looking to have a steadier performance because he was huge in that second half against Kansas, had 12 points after not scoring in the first half, hit some big shots, looked like he was in the flow of the offense, especially in transition. So he's a big one. And you mentioned Luca. I think Luca's figuring it out. I'm not as worried about Luca just because he is a pro. He has all that experience. You can start to see it come on for him a little bit. And he hit a couple threes that looked really good, really in rhythm against Navy. So you like to see that continue and get off to a hot start against St. Bonaventure's before they play Michigan State.
Yeah, totally. And looking ahead to December, we've mentioned some of the challenges and these guys having to step up. What do you think is the biggest challenge with Seth out in terms of finding an identity, team chemistry? How do you think it affects this team the most and in what area?
A couple of ways. The primary way is well, it's really on both ends of the floor. I was going to say defensively, it's the primary way, but honestly, it's equally on both ends. Defensively, Seth is their top perimeter defender, and that puts a ton of pressure on Jaren Stevenson. Jaren Stevenson is we've seen just how important he's been as a glue guy, but also defensively, he's got a lot of versatility. They can put him on perimeter players, but that's not where he's going to be as effective or as comfortable. And so Seth's the better defender. You need him. His on-ball defense against Darren Peterson was really important. I know Darren Peterson went for 22 points, but he had to work for every single point that he got that night. And Seth was just his on-ball defense is pretty impressive. So you need that defensively, athletically overall his ability to get in transition, our team changes in terms of how we run without him out there. And Kyan's really good with that hit ahead pass, and they have a lot of chemistry. So you see him finishing in the break. So defensively, number one, but then transition, and then offensively, who's going to pressure the rim? Without Seth in there offensively, you've kind of seen how we're not getting guys driving all the way cleanly to the rim or being able to finish, whether it's Luka or Kyan very frequently. Seth gives you that option and makes your offense that much more dynamic because then you can space with those shooters, like you were saying, and you have Caleb and Henry lurking in the dunker spots where you just can't lose track of either of them because Caleb is leading the country in dunks and Henry's like right behind him in the top five. So that's where I would say we miss him in both ways. And then just all the experience that he has, his ability to kind of slow guys down, get them back together. I do think Caleb's not going to let guys stray too far in terms of their focus because he is so competitive, but it helps to have that guy who's played in all of these big games at this point. He's seen just about everything that you can in 4 years now at Carolina. So the leadership offensively, the rim pressure, especially dynamic in transition, and the defensively, his ball pressure is they don't have somebody else who's really able to replicate that. And we've seen how that's hurt them even in the last couple of games with some of these guards they've played that have been able to get the spots. And that will probably continue here in the next few games until he's back.
Yeah, and I think one of the places I really saw it kind of exposed was the game against Navy late when I do believe, having him in the lineup that his leadership on the court would have been able to nix the 13-0 run that Navy went on late. Like that was kind of inexcusable and letting that happen. I'm sure Hubert wasn't happy with it. And of course the players weren't either, players only meeting apparently called after that game and we never know exactly what's addressed, but it sounds like there were some things they wanted to really focus on. I don't know if you had heard any more details on the players only meeting. It's hard to get much info on some of that if you're not in the inner circle, of course. But you got to think that that's just something that they don't see as acceptable. And I imagine that Seth had a part in having those conversations and making sure the team stays focused going into these games over Feast Week. So yeah, leadership is a big thing. I mean, he's a 4-year Carolina player, the rarest kind of player now that a lot of universities just don't get the chance to have. So losing him for 6 to 8 weeks is definitely a blow. But at the same time, you kind of have to be thankful that it happened now, because if this happens at the beginning of January and you lose Seth for all of ACC play, I mean, it's just kind of indescribable. We've been lucky to avoid some injuries over the last couple of years, so knock on wood that we continue to keep a healthy roster in ACC play. But yeah, it gives guys like Kyan an opportunity to step up, like you mentioned, Jaren on defense, and for this team to really prove something in these bigger games. And they've got Michigan State coming up. You have guys like Jeremy Fears who are gonna light it up if he's not defended by a guy like Seth. And so you really have to keep an eye on that. And of course, going to Kentucky, top 10 team in the country. They're always gonna be good, and they're always gonna be really tough to beat at home. So that's where that experience can really come into play, and having a leader who's been there for 4 years to calm the team down, to refocus them if the crowd gets to be too much. It's going to be that who steps up to not let this team get out of control. If the game gets a few possessions ahead, how do we not go down 10 to 15? Or how do we not start cold? How do we make sure that we lock in early, come in prepared? And I know Seth's doing all that behind the scenes. It's just going to be a little bit of a different dynamic in these bigger games going into December.
It is. I mean, you mentioned Jeremy Fears. He's somebody that I'm pretty worried about in that Michigan State game. If we struggle with Austin Benini, who's a good player for Navy, the guard who just felt like he was able to get in
There's
the
there's
paint.
always one, Jonathan. There's always one in the Dean Dome in these
There
situations.
always is. I mean, he was carving us up. And if that's happening, Jeremy Fears is averaging over 10 assists a game so far this season. Braden Smith with Purdue is on pace to break the Big Ten record for assists at the end of this year. Jeremy Fears is already ahead of his pace.
Mm,
And so you have somebody who is one of the most dangerous assist guys in the country with Jeremy Fears. And he also is over 5-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. So I know we'll get to Michigan State, but I mean that alone, I think, is where you wish you had Seth Trimble. And it's not just him. You think about Kentucky. Jalen Lowe is hurt, but they have other guys on the perimeter. But especially, I think about like Georgetown coming up to you with Malik Mack and KJ Lewis, and then you also have the Ohio State game with Bruce Thornton. So multiple perimeter guys that can really cause problems and drive the bus for their individual teams, and that's going to be something that we're going to have to figure out a different way, right? We're going to have to really. Figure out whether schematically or just these guys have to step up a little bit on the perimeter, whether it's Kyan, whether it's a Jonathan Powell, maybe.
hmm
Hopefully, he could play
He's
some
been
more
good.
minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, JP's been good. Again, I kind of had to pick him as my favorite because he transferred on my birthday, so I immediately liked him when he committed to Carolina. But he's got that corner spot up three. He's kind of chosen that as his spot. It's nice to see it go, and he does have a really pretty shot.
He does. I'd like to see him do a little bit more than that, and he wants to do more. I mean, that was one of the things coming from West Virginia, where he was a specialist last year as a freshman, and said he could show more, and they felt like the staff felt like he could show more too. Uh, right now, he's been more or less a spot up shooter, so we'll see
Yeah.
what he can do. If for now, even in these next couple of games, if that's what you get from him, like in the Kansas game where he hits a couple of corner threes, we'll take it. But we need him to be active and defensively. Hopefully, he can give you a little bit more in terms of somebody who's 6'6", who has some good length, and in theory should be a pretty solid defender. You're going to need it because Luka is just a little limited defensively, even though as a team defender he's scrappy, he hustles, Kyan does too. They just don't have the same length and athleticism as a Seth does. I mean, that's he's kind of one of a kind with his athleticism, but yeah. So I think JP's got to step up as well. So we'll see what happens there, but it's going to be interesting next couple of games. Do you want to get more into Michigan State, or where do you want to
Yeah, let's
focus
do
next?
a quick preview on Michigan State. Just want to get your insight into anybody additional. They got some guys down low. In addition to Fears, obviously we've talked about on the perimeter and just as a dynamic guard. But looking ahead to this, it's Izzo in November. I mean, he at home he's been unbeatable. But he's just, this team is always there. It's a legendary coach. It's always a tough matchup for us. But give me kind of your 30,000 foot view of what to expect, and then from here we'll jump into more of the ACC conversation and how they've been performing better than last year and comparable to the ACC that we've known.
Yeah, I mean, I think you made a good point about Izzo. You know what you're going to get with a Tom Izzo team, and where there's been questions year to year with Hubert Davis's team's identities, you don't have a lot of questions about a good Izzo team. And while this, I don't think is an elite team, and they lose Jace Richardson, who was fantastic as a freshman last year, they don't necessarily have that clear star. Maybe it is going to be Fears, but they are super physical. They're going to be one of the more physical teams that Carolina plays all season. Uh, I'm pretty sure that Izzo, maybe this was a joke. I could see it
You
being
never
real
know with
where
him.
they would put on pads in practice
Yeah.
and just play with a football mentality. And that's what you're going to get from guys like Jackson Kohler and Carson Cooper, both of who feel like at this point they've been there forever. They were both on that team that played Carolina 2 years ago in the second round, and I think it was Cooper that Seth Trimble actually blocked at the rim. And it was either Cooper or Kohler. Either way, you're talking about a guy who's like 6'9", 6'10", and
Hmm.
Seth blocking him at 6'3".
Right.
Um, but both those guys have really developed, and that's also a credit to Izzo. Kohler, especially, he's over 15 points a game. He's also somebody who's going to extend out a little bit, so you got to at least pay attention to him, close out on him from three. Um, and he's almost 10 rebounds a game. That's the biggest question for me in this game is as good as Caleb Wilson and Henry Vasar have been to this point in the season, they aren't the most physical in terms of a front court. Can they withstand that physicality, that just want to kind of bruise you up approach that you're going to see from Kohler and Cooper and some of these other guys that are going to be there for Michigan State?
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest tests, and also again, like we mentioned, seeing how Kyan kind of settles in. It's limiting the turnovers, see who can step up on Jeremy Fears and be physical and go against a big team. Kansas was good, and it was a tough matchup, and I think again, Vessar and Caleb Wilson both shined that game, and so hopefully they do again. But looking ahead after the Michigan State game and after the Fort Myers tip-off, obviously you have Kentucky, and we can kind of pause on those for now. But I just want to talk about the ACC as a whole. Completely different league than last year. When you get to ACC play, you're not gonna have an easy game. We've got 17 of 18 teams right now in the top 100 in KenPom. Boston College being the sole outlier, and I think nine of those teams, as of today recording, are in the top 50. That's right there with the Big 12, who also has nine. The SEC and the Big 10 are sitting at about 12 each. Huge leagues, incredibly talented, and but we're right there in the conversation, and we weren't last year. And obviously, that was a talking point come Selection Sunday. We couldn't get past it. But the thing is, any game you have in the ACC is going to be good for your resume. And so, what have you seen from the ACC this year in teams like Louisville, Duke, Wake with a win over Memphis at the buzzer the other day? The best 1-4 team I've ever seen. Memphis, shout out to Penny Hardaway and his crew. They've had some really tough losses, but they'll be right there in the conversation ultimately. But who are you buying? Who are you selling? Who do you like? What's your overall take on the league this year?
So I'm buying that the league is better. I think that's clear. Just like you said, some of the examples you threw out in terms of a comparison between this year and last year, it probably wasn't that hard to be better than last year was
Yeah,
awful. Well,
right.
last year was
Really rough.
last year was really bad. I mean, you're talking about Louisville finishing second. tied for second in the conference. They lost what, two games in conference all year, and they were an eight seed. That just feels you can't even wrap your head around that if you think about the
Yeah.
ACC as a conference, that the second place team would be an eight seed. Um, so it is going to be different. I think, like you said, there's going to be several teams that are going to be in the mix here in the top three to four within the conference. I still think that it's Duke and Louisville as the top two. At this point, it feels like Louisville especially has they got that big win over Kentucky, so that's something they can speak to early. Just knocked off, I think it was Cincinnati the other night, and Mikal Brown for them, their freshman guard is dynamic, and they are just loaded in the backcourt. Whether it's him or Ryan Conwell, who transferred in from Xavier, those two guys have been tremendous. I still have questions for them in the front court. And so ultimately, I think they go as far as some of those guys are able to take them. But your guy, you're a big Ali Khalifa guy. It's good to see him back on the
Hmm.
court after being out for a year now
Yeah.
at Louisville, coming from BYU. So they have him. They have Sonata Frew, who's coming in from Germany, big physical, athletic. It just has not really lived up to the expectations yet. But again, it's early in the season. But they to me feel like they've shown the best. Duke has taken care of business. Like they haven't done anything
Hmm.
where they've felt like they've underachieved. They are really, really good under John Shire at absolutely destroying lower level teams. They won by felt like 60 tonight against Howard. And this brotherhood run that they have, by the way, feels like the most rigged situation ever where you bring in a Greg Paulus and it's like, yeah, name your score, how much you want my team to lose you by. Like I know they're not going to lose to that Niagara anyway.
Right. Right.
But I mean they are absolutely destroying these teams that come for the brotherhood run. They destroyed Bobby Hurley last year in the exhibition with
Yeah.
Arizona
Yeah.
State. So Ken Palm loves that. Ken Palm loves when the metrics love when you absolutely just obliterate lower level teams. They've done that.
Yep.
They looked what okay against Texas,
Hmm.
and they looked okay against Kansas. Kansas didn't have Darren Peterson, so you factor that in. But you're still looking for them, I think, to really make a statement. Um, I mean, we're not, right? We
Yeah. I'm not
definitely
looking
don't.
for that at all.
But but in terms of like if they're really going to win the conference over Louisville, then that's what you need to see. I do feel like those teams have separated, and then you have Carolina right in that pack of the next set of teams. I'd say honestly, I'd say they're the next tier because as much as the national media has loved NC State so far this year, I'm not totally sold on a close win over VCU at home. I just have not seen enough from them. Their rim protection is really questionable, and I see some shades of Carolina last year
Hmm.
with somebody
Hmm.
as talented as Darren Peterson, not Darren Peterson, as Darian Williams,
Yeah.
who's been sensational, right? Like
Yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
case to be made that Cameron Boozer, Caleb Wilson, and Darian Peterson are the player of the year, not just in the conference, but definitely first team All American level. But outside of that, Van Allen Lubin's been okay. He has not looked as good as he did with Elliot Cadeau last year, and you kind of see now him without Elliot, who it felt like he was elevating Val's game down the stretch, and he just has been all right. Um, so I mean, bigger picture beyond some of those teams that are talked about a lot in that top tier, I do like the fact that you have now other teams, whereas it dropped off a lot, but you have teams like Virginia Tech who have some real talent and are going to be annoying to play against, to be honest.
Hmm.
SMU, I think that you always question Andy Enfield at this point has kind of had them on the bubble, the wrong side of the bubble, but they have some talent. Um, and one of their players, BJ Edwards, went for a triple double with steals, I think it was the other night, and Boopy Miller is back.
Gracious.
Like
That's tough to do in any game.
yeah, they have some talent there. That's going to be a tricky game, and we need Seth Trimble back for that game early in January when it happens. So all that to say, the depth is better, but I still think you can kind of get towards the bottom of the league, and Pitt has just been disappointing.
I know you're really sad over that.
It doesn't hurt me too much. I mean, it it is one of those things that I think the disappointing part is they just seem like they just don't have a shot. They I was following the game today. They were behind against Quinnipiac. They ended up losing 83 to 75.
Oof.
That's just not good. They got absolutely destroyed by West Virginia. There's questions about how good is West Virginia, but they lost that game by 20 plus, 71 to
Yeah.
49. So I think Pitt's really bad. I think that's fair to say. Boston College is maybe not Louisville bad from a couple
Boston
years
College
ago.
is Boston College. They've been
They're
Boston College. They're still Boston College.
They yeah, but they are taking Boston College to a new level this year. They're gross. You mentioned they're the one team that you kind of singled out. They're also the one team we don't play, which is
Right.
which is always fun the way that works out. But yeah, so I think overall it should be a much more enjoyable ACC season. In the ACC is closing some of these non-conference games. You have to have it happen. Even like Clemson tonight beating Georgia in overtime. That type of stuff
Yeah.
matters as you get.
Wait, and the buzzer beater. Yeah.
Yeah, the buzzer beater, because they had two close losses where they lose by 1 point or one basket to Michigan and Texas Tech. So th those things matter. So I'm hoping that we'll get a, especially as we get into the SEC Challenge, that we get some of these wins as a conference because that helps everybody as you get closer to March.
Yeah, I'm gonna take a quick deep dive on this the ACC as a whole right now. I love Ken Palm, and so yes, Duke is number one, and they are predicted to win every single game according to Ken Palm the rest of the year. We'll see, right? We'll see how that goes. But looking at the top eight in the ACC right now, 43-3 is the record. You have teams like Miami. Virginia just took their first loss today. That was to Butler. Miami's only loss is to Florida, and Clemson's only loss is to Georgetown. So these are good schools. Butler being ranked 48th in Kim Palm, so they're always relevant, always competitive, and it's not a bad loss. It was close as well. So when you're looking at the top eight, I mean, you're gonna have a hard game every night, especially when you don't get BC on your schedule like us. But I digress. I do look forward to the ACC more this year than I have in years past, and it's just nice to see teams like Wake getting those big wins on the road and just being right there in the conversation, even in the Deacon Wolverine Challenge, my least favorite quote unquote tournament of all time. You can't have a tournament with two teams. I don't care if you play it back to back years. It's just not a tournament. It's just a matchup. And also play that home and home. Don't. This is my tangent. I know. I hate when there's neutral court games that could be home and homes, and I know you feel the same. But all that to say, I'm super stoked on the ACC. Going to be some tough road games for sure, and starting with games like SMU, where we really hope that we have Seth back for those road games.
Hey man, don't knock the non-conference named challenges. I think we should raise the banner for the Tar Heel Jayhawk challenge. Well, they called it the Blue Blood Battle when they initially promoted it, and they never talked about that again. I love
Good.
that. So
No,
that
no,
now that should
yeah,
go up, raise the banner. We
sure,
got that
yeah,
one for 2025.
yeah,
I even think as you look at some of these other teams like Stanford, they're at least going to be somewhat fun to watch because they have this freshman, Abuka
exactly.
Okorie, who he at one point a game or two ago was over 25 points a game. He's now at 23.8. He's really struggling. But he's just been dynamic. And I think with somebody like Kyle Smith as their coach, they're going to be tough. That's going to be a tricky game again. Obviously, we got tripped up last year at home. We have to go now to Palo Alto this year. So there's going to be some games like that where teams take a loss that you don't expect because the coaching is better overall. I think that's the other piece. Really, the story that the lead that gets buried is you had this influx of strong coaches coming into the league, and that matters. And I think that has
Mhm.
elevated the conference to at least well above where it was last year. Still not, in the conversation for one of the top two or three conferences in the country, but we at least we're not being listed as the power conference that's the worst one, which the Big East is
Yeah,
now taking that
yeah.
title for this year.
Yeah, Big East is definitely not top tier this year. Butler being one of the better teams in that conference, and again ranked 48th, and Ken Palm is not a great look. Um, but yeah, the ACC is going to be incredibly exciting. I think there's a lot to look forward to, and especially just watching this team develop. Again, I know we say this line a lot, but the ceiling does feel like the roof for this team in this case. Hubert's got to be feeling better than he was a week before the season with the unknowns. Getting that win versus Kansas was just huge, and I hope that we can kind of carry the momentum going forward. But what's the game that you're game or two that you're looking forward to the most coming up in the next couple months?
The Michigan State game is probably the one. I feel like that's, Kentucky feels more gettable than it did, just the way they've come out, and Michigan State definitely took it to them in the Champions Classic.
Yep.
But Michigan State also shot the lights out from three in that game, and they then came back against Detroit Mercy the other night and shot like 25%.
And we're gonna have to hit some threes ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, well, honestly, I think that comes down to um, rebounding. Can you make sure that you don't get out rebounded significantly by Michigan State? Can you match the maybe not match the physicality, but hang in there with it? And then you got to hit shots, and whoever hits feels a little bit like in football when 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 like John Madden would say, like whoever scores the most points tonight's going to win. But
Totally.
whoever hits the most shots, I think from the perimeter in that one is going to be the team that comes out on top. So that'll be interesting. I do think that to me, because Michigan State feels like they have staying power, that feels huge. I'm also pretty intrigued by the Georgetown game too, to be honest. I mean, they've come out really hot to start the year. Ed Cooley's a good coach. We knew that they were on the rise. That still might not be a quad one game, but it could be close because they're undefeated at this point, and their backcourt with Mac, and then you have KJ Lewis, who he can play guard, play on the wing. He's like 6'5", played at Arizona. Um, he's a good player. He's had a great start to the year. So I think to me, that's intriguing because you don't have Trimble and you need to win at home. You can afford to lose the Michigan State game. You can afford to lose the Kentucky game, but you really can't afford to lose to Georgetown at home. And that's a losable game. So I have my eyes on that one. In Ohio State, I mean, really all of these big time games coming
Yep.
up are have my attention, but Ohio State with Bruce Thornton, with some of the other guys that they
Hmm.
have, Mobley and Christoph Tilly, which is a great name, but transfer from Santa Clara, who is a legit 7 feet
Mm,
mobile. I mean, he and Vase are similar players in some ways in terms of Tilly's athleticism. He's going to want to dunk on you. And I think that's going to be a fun matchup too. So a lot to look forward to in the coming weeks. But I mean, I don't want to I don't want to get folks who are really excited and high on this team right now. I don't want to bring it down too much, but I am a little bit skeptical, even a little bit concerned because we have seen some of the stagnant periods on offense. We have seen some of the reverting back to really having to take players off the dribble and create shots late in the shot clock at times offensively.
yep.
Even though we've seen pretty offense too, right? We've seen more off-ball movement. We've seen much more of the action that you need, the high-low activity too. The assist numbers are up. This is the highest in terms of a UNC team at this point in the season anyway, under Hubert in terms of number of assists. That needs to continue because I don't know. I have concerns just the inconsistency that Hubert's had within seasons over the years. That scares me a little bit as we get into this stretch. I still feel like this is a team that they've raised the level. It should be a second weekend team, a top four team in the ACC, but it doesn't feel to me like a championship contender or even a legitimate Final Four team. If they hit that ceiling with Seth back, maybe. But I'm going to have to see more from them. If they beat Michigan State, we'll have a different conversation. As I
Sure.
told somebody in a UNC Discord, like if we blow out Michigan State on Thanksgiving, then let's pack up in the car and carpool to Indianapolis. I'll be ready at that point.
Awesome. Yeah, it's going to be, another kind of tone setting game for the season for sure. And it's one of my favorite things about Carolina basketball this time of year. Obviously, Feast Week is great, but I'll be in Chapel Hill for Thanksgiving with the fam and all that. And one of my favorite things is having that Thanksgiving Day game after a big meal. You sit down, you turn on the big screen, and you just lock in with nowhere to go. That's one of my favorite experiences watching with the fam. Um, I just hope we get the win, like you said. So that's one I'm looking forward to. And the other is definitely the Ohio State game, which you and I are going to be at. You don't know it yet, but we're going to figure it out.
Are we going to Atlanta? Are we
Yeah.
going to figure that out?
Yeah, get the pod crew on board. I know I kind of floated it the other day to the group chat. We'll see if we can get any more bites.
I am very intrigued about that Kentucky St. John's game and that other game.
Yeah, yeah, some
In
good
addition to the
talent. Good to
Ohio
see Ian
State,
Jackson, man.
yeah, Ian Jackson cherry picked his way to 20 points the other night. He had a good night. It was his best scoring game, but I watched the beginning of that game and he was just leaking out by himself on fast breaks, and I was like, that takes a little bit away from how impressive this is.
Those are
Um,
Cade Tyson at Minnesota numbers.
yeah, he did what he did for us in games where he had big numbers. He hit catch and shoot threes, and he was fantastic in transition, and he took advantage of those times where he was leaking out as well. So n nothing against Ian. I mean, I think he's going to do kind of what we thought he was going to do, just not be a point guard. And I mean, I guess that ties into the other piece of this. Now that we're at this point in the season, 5 games in, it feels like I have to give Hubert and staff and Jim Tanner credit because they needed to reshape this team. It wasn't just the roster construction, which obviously needed to change, and they took care of the positional
Mm.
size, especially up front. It's also the mentality too. This feels like a much more enjoyable team to cheer for, where even if Kyan Evans is having an off shooting night, I don't question his buy-in, right? I
Right.
don't question his
Exactly.
competitiveness or want
It's a great
to
point.
wear a Carolina jersey. I don't question that from really any of these guys out there. Certainly not Caleb Wilson, who is Mr. Carolina 5 games into a. It's unbelievable. We've never seen
Yeah.
anything like this
Yeah.
from a freshman, just in terms of he's out there at the football game on Saturday and starting the Tar Heels chant against Duke.
Yeah. It's
People
great.
love this kid,
Yeah.
and it's his personality. It's also his. I mean, he's you don't want to mess with him. Like he's gonna
You'll be
back
his
up the
wallpaper.
top.
That's not a good thing.
What's that?
You'll be his wallpaper, and that's not a good thing.
You'll be his wallpaper and you'll feel the belt. Like he's brought the belt. I mean, this guy's only got 1 game where so far where he has not scored 20 or more points. In that game, he had 14 rebounds, right, against Radford. So
Right.
it's just it's unbelievable. So it's in that sense, like you don't see a lot of hanging heads, even when things are not going as well. And back to the team meeting piece, just from what was said in press conferences, Henry and a few others, that Seth was one of the key people who called that.
Mm.
And it was basically like they came together as a group and said, look, this is not acceptable. We can't play like this. We can't if we want to go where we want to go, we can't have this happening. So I think even that leadership early in the season, when you're still undefeated, right, before you hit this stretch is key because they can't lose focus at all, really. They can't lose that edge against a Michigan State. Otherwise, it's not going to go well. So
Yeah.
that part I am really excited about. I think it's going to be a fun year, regardless of whether I think right now they're a true contender. And we're 5 games in. There's a
Right.
lot that can
Yeah.
change. One of your best players is not even on the court right now, so that will change a lot. As we saw in that second half against Kansas, when they did look like a national championship contender for a half.
So you're saying you're not ready to put out a full bracketology report, like ESPN level expert?
Yeah, I'm gonna wait at least until December. Tell you what, I'll wait until after that Michigan State game, which is when I opt. I understand if you want to put your lights up early. If you're like, look, Halloween's over, it's
I
time for
don't.
Christmas.
No.
That's fine. I think especially after the pandemic, with what everybody went through, if lights make you happy, that's fantastic. I'm
Sure thing.
traditional in that sense. I'm gonna wait. So I'm also gonna wait to put out my bracketology report until after those Thanksgiving games, and then we can focus on March. Okay, we can focus on
Deal.
Christmas. We
Yeah.
can focus on March after Thanksgiving. I just, at least let me mute Seth Davis. It's Seth Davis, right? Who does a Wonderful Life
I feel like it. Yeah,
live
probably. I
tweeting.
don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, just let me mute his tweeting of "It's a Wonderful Life," and then we can talk about bracketology.
Deal. The people will be waiting. We'll see. You have them in the final four.
Montana's a 16 seed. That's what I can give you right now. I feel confident about Money Williams in Montana being a
Money
16.
William. Yeah, I forgot about that name. Just the best.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
He's
that's great.
tremendous.
So, anything else you want to wrap up on before we go? Again, we haven't been on since Independence Day weekend, and so we hope everybody had a good summer, and we are very glad to be back. I think what you can expect from us now that I'm a couple weeks into a job, a little more steady. Jonathan's a couple months into his. We've sorted some things out, got through a few life things, and and we're back, and it feels good. It always feels good to be on and be able to talk about this. So we're going to be looking to be more consistent with the episodes that we put out, especially as these bigger games come out. Whether it's just a preview of that game or kind of a general assessment of the team, but definitely when ACC play happens, getting back into that routine. And I just want to say I appreciate all the folks being here, all the fans, and if you don't have anything else, I definitely want to end with our point out, of course.
I've got something that leads into that. It was Caleb Wilson being featured on Slam magazine this week with the Sparkle Bedazzle belt
So good.
in the tremendous, and just asking him what that meant, his mentality. You just kind of peek inside the way this guy ticks. That I don't want to put wild expectations on him, but it reminds you of some of the top competitors that have come through at UNC, which is saying a lot. And even to be on this cover, there are not that many Carolina guys, certainly freshmen, who have been on the cover of Slam magazine. So he's unique. I think we just have to really enjoy every performance by him while we have it. And like you said, it's not just the points. The rebounding has been tremendous. He's now averaging a double-double. The blocks, the steals, the assist, everything
The
that he
energy, man.
brings,
Yeah.
the energy. Um, it feels like if you turn the game off for a minute or you leave the room, you're going to miss an electric highlight and stuff that we don't see very often. So, yeah, so that stood out to me that he was on Slam magazine, getting a different level of positive attention for this Carolina team this year in program,
Yeah.
which is very needed after last season, especially.
Yeah, it's refreshing, and hopefully Caleb can lift what I will now deem the magazine curse from 2023. Hopefully missing the NCAA tournament after being on the cover of SI in that classic photo. Caleb, it's nice that you're here, and that's why you get our point out.
He's gonna be in a video game too, right? Because NBA 2K that was
You
announced
know,
through Carolina's social media. That so he's at some point, I guess, at least he's been scanned into the game, so we
he
could
has.
see
Yeah, can
uh,
confirm.
Caleb Wilson in a video game. Maybe that balances out the magazine curse if you're also in a video game. Hopefully that helps. Although we haven't seen he's not on the cover necessarily, but we haven't seen a lot of success with covers, at least with Madden. Um, yeah, I mean he's been tremendous. He's already one of the best Carolina freshmen through 5 games. Let's get too far ahead of ourselves. It's a long
He's
season,
one of
but
the more like most liked already. I'll give him that. Like he's got a lot to prove still, and you
yeah.
said you don't want to put expectations on him, but the good news is he's putting them on himself. You know,
Yeah, he doesn't mind,
he's
and that
holding
doesn't seem to
himself to it.
bother him at all. I mean, he fully
Yeah,
expects to be. The
20 and
thing that I
10,
love
right?
about him most is that he cares most about winning.
Right.
He was not
That's clear.
happy. He had a good performance individually against Navy. He was not happy about
Yep.
how the team played, and he
Yep.
was upset after the game. And to have somebody who ends a game with 20 plus points and did the things that he did in that second half and just looked like he was playing a different game at times, to be that upset about it, that's the part. That's the part
Hmm.
that it's like, okay, this guy love cheering for him. That's fantastic. But yeah, he's special, and he does have a chance here. I mean, he's already averaging over 20 points a game. I joked with somebody else recently that it's nice to have a 20 plus point scorer again at Carolina. It's been 2 years. It's been too long since RJ Davis averaged 21 plus.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, he's awesome. And I think I don't see why he really can't continue a lot of what he's been doing, right? People are gonna start scheming against him a little bit differently, but he's shown enough variety in his game that I'm not betting against him. I don't think that's a good idea, to be honest. I
Yeah.
don't want to feel the
He would
belt.
agree. Yeah.
So I'm just going to ride with Caleb Wilson for the rest of the season and beyond that.
Yeah, that combination of athleticism and energy is super unique, and so we're just very lucky to have him. Enjoy it, like Jonathan said, enjoy it every single game. When I told my dad ESPN was back on YouTube TV the other day, he said, "Good, time for the Caleb Wilson show." So he actually gets to lock in. He gets it. He gets it. He said this kid's the real deal. So he is.
Yeah, and I going back to Michigan State as we're wrapping up, I'm excited to see him again now that it's been a couple games against lower competition since the Kansas game to see peak Caleb Wilson.
Totally.
He's that edge, that aggressiveness. I just want to see what's going to happen when he has to go up against their front line. And they have one of the Cohen Carr for them. Their wing has a 50 plus vertical, and so he's incredibly athletic. But ultimately, what I want to see is Carr on a fast break with Caleb Wilson with the ball one on one. And Carr has to make a business decision because you know what Caleb Wilson's going to do. So, yeah, I can't wait for that game now. You got me excited for this next stage in the season.
Let's go.
I wish we could tip it off right now. We
That's
still have
part of the
time.
reason we like the pod, get you in the zone, make you feel it again. It's easy to get in the day-to-day of 9 to 5s, going to work, taking care of the kid, trying to get enough sleep, all of that. This is what it's all about this time of year.
Look, I've got Tuesday off. I mean, Fort Myers isn't that far, right? We can probably get there for game time.
I love the spirit. Love the spirit. Yeah, we'll book our hotel in Atlanta along the way.
Sounds good.
Appreciate you being on, Jay. Glad we made time for it. Yes, so one final point out to Caleb Wilson, the man on campus right now. Absolutely a joy to watch. And we'll keep you all updated on the pod as the season goes. But until next time, we'll just say go Heels.
Sparkle, bedazzle, go Heels.
New phrase, new season.